Oh, hey, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. Mark, Miguel, thank you so much for joining us today. How the heck are you guys doing today?
Doing great, Chris. Thanks for having us.
Oh, so happy to have you. Miguel, are you okay? Are you doing good? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, thumbs
definitely.
up. Okay, good deal. Great. Want to make sure everyone is tuned in and listening. Thank you for joining us. Today is our Data God of the Week Lunch and Learn. We're diving deep into all things data. And this week, we are so lucky to be talking about a component inside of Microsoft Fabric, Azure Data Factory. This has been a key piece of a data platform's functionality in Azure for I think it's 8 years now, and it's like a critical piece of the Microsoft Fabric space. So we're going to be diving into that in just a little bit. So, but before we do, I want to hear about everyone who's in the audience. Let us know where you're from and what are you having for lunch during this lunch and learn. I am having a protein shake because, well, it's awkward if I have huge mouths of food when we're talking and whatnot. So I'm just going to be doing a protein shake. So let us know inside the chat where what you're eating. Make sure you do like and subscribe. Any comments and stuff do help feed the logarithm and let people know that you're checking this stuff out here. So please tune in and let us know. Okay, but before we jump into all the serious data talk, I want to know more about Mark, Miguel. This is our first time meeting. I at least as far as I know. So I want to know more about you. And we're going to start, ladies first. Miguel, how did you get involved with Azure Data Factory? What's your background? As a small child playing in a sandbox, did you say to yourself, "I want to do Azure Data Factory when I grow up"? How did this go?
Oh, yeah, sure, definitely. So I'm a program manager for the Data Factory team. I work mostly on the data flow part of things. I've been with Microsoft for 4 years almost now. Started out as an intern and stayed on so far. I'm from the Netherlands originally. I started out in the field as a consultant, working mostly with Power BI, and like after a year, I transferred to the product group to really start working on the product. I've been working on data flows ever since, and yeah, loving it so far.
Oh, that's fantastic. And yourself, Mark, as a small child, I like some people played fireman or astronaut. Did you play data engineer? What was your journey to this point?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there were no data engineers when I was a kid, Chris. I will say that's always sort of something having to do with software and computers. That was always me, right? So my entire life, unfortunately, it's always been that way. And to get into the data side of things, that was not really a natural. I mean, that wasn't like really an artificial thing that I kind of naturally sort of progressed into it. I my background is as a software engineer. I went to school for computer science and software engineering, and I really avoided databases like the plague. And then once I got into the real world and actually started working as an actual software engineer, what ended up being the case was that we had to, store data. When you work for companies and you work for a business, you need to store data somewhere. And we had a real most of the companies I worked for before joining Microsoft as a software engineer, they didn't really have they didn't spend the money they needed to or the resources they needed to on database administrators. And so I ended up kind of being that. You've probably seen this over the years, right? That hybrid developer slash DBA. And so I just kind of became that sort of data expert over the years. And I have now been in this data specific data warehousing, big data space for about 25 years, believe it or not. And I've been with Microsoft for over 13 years. And
Wow.
delivered it always in the data space, right? I've been working on products from SQL Server integration services to Azure Data Factory. I've been in the field and all those things. But this is the crazy thing. I have been in the ETL and data integration space for 20 years, having done this also for Oracle and for a company called Pentaho, which is just weird. Pentaho was just completely focused only on ETL space. In fact, at Pentaho, we actually coined the term data lake. our CTO, actually coined that term. It's in Wiki. It's in Wikipedia if you don't believe me. You can look it up. I remember when he said it. Like, this is going to take off. This is going to be the thing, the next big thing.
Well, and how true is that, right? Like,
that is very true. In fact, Microsoft now, right, our whole Fabric sort of product is based on Lakehouse and Data Lake, which we'll talk about in just a bit.
Awesome.
But that's me. And really, I think the key thing that we'll focus on today, just FYI, is you mentioned Azure Data Factory being around for 8 years. I think it's almost 9 years now. 2014 is when we launched.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And we were like one of the very first Azure platform services. PaaS versus the IaaS. So what we're doing with Fabric is really taking that and melding that together with all the different data integration products we've had over time within Microsoft. And Miquel and I are, we focus on data factory data integration. Fabric is much bigger than that. We'll talk a little bit about that today, but I'll stop there and let you kind of continue with the intros.
Well, and actually that is an incredible journey. And so I think you're going to really appreciate a question that came in from Twitter yesterday. Ryan Kakur asked this, and I think I saw that. I think you liked it, or at least you responded to us. Like, hey, Azure Data Factory. So it's been, it started as a standalone product, right?
Yep.
It was then brought into Synapse, and when they brought into Synapse, there was Azure Data Factory code base, and then there was the Synapse Azure Data Factory code base. Now, are we going to have a third Fabric Azure Data Factory code base that we have to like kind of understand and work in? Where are we at with this?
Yeah,
starting with the hard ones right now. So
yeah, no, it's fine. So I've we hear from Ryan a lot, so I do appreciate that question.
Okay,
and, a great great customer user of ours. Yeah, one of the feedback we've gotten from customers is, can we have more data factories like everywhere? So Synapse, in case y'all don't know, Synapse was launched a couple of years ago, and that was also the same thing as Fabric in the sense that it was a workspace of many different Microsoft Analytics products, primarily Azure at that time, right? That because it is actually called Azure Synapse Analytics. By the way, as we talk today, let's remember one thing that's important to note is that Fabric is not really an Azure product, right? Azure Data Factory is in Azure. It requires you to go to the Azure portal to spin it up. Same thing with Synapse Analytics.
Yep.
Fabric is not. Fabric is based on Power BI. And so you use the Power BI model, which is a SaaS, software as a service model, which is different and meant to be easier, quicker to get started and all that kind of stuff, right? So back to the question. When we launched Synapse Analytics, we went to have a workspace with all your analytics capabilities in one place. And so, yes, Data Factory was brought into that. And he is right, and you were right, in that it was not the exact same code base. There's a slight difference in that, because a lot of the underpinnings of Synapse are different than in Azure Data Factory. So it's about, I would say about 90% of what's in Azure Data Factory is in Azure Synapse Analytics from a pipeline and data flows perspective today. What we did with Fabric was to take that same base of Data Factory and just surface that inside of Power BI with all of the different elements of Fabrics. That includes the Lakehouse, that includes the new data warehouse, which I think they just call as warehouse within Fabric. We've got data explorers in there as KQL, and all those kinds of things are in there. But what we did was to take Data Factory and change it a bit for Fabric so that it can talk to all those native Power BI things, like the connections, the shared connections in there. All of there's RBAC, right? There's a whole new security model that comes along with it that we had to change. So it's a really long-winded me of saying that it's similar, but not exactly the same thing.
Okay.
There's still Azure Data Factory.
Okay.
Standalone.
Fair
There's enough. Microsoft Fabric, and yes, there's still Synapse Analytics as well.
Awesome. Well, great to understand and great to see where it fits into the solution, right? And so what we're getting inside of Microsoft Fabric when we talk Data Factory is a solution that has been, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to summarize what you just said, right? It's it's an Azure Data Factory solution that has been in some ways simplified to be directly integrated with the solution to make it easier for people to start to just use the core capabilities of Azure Data Factory. Is that a good synopsis of sorts?
I'd say, don't say synapses, too close to synapse.
Oh, okay. All right.
Summary. That's actually a good. That's better. That was actually a pretty good summary. I do like that. The only caveat, and this is hard to kind of adjust everybody's brains to, because I know Miquel and I have kind of struggled with this too, is that we try not to say Azure Data Factory because it's Data Factory and there's no Azure involved in it when you're in Fabric. Azure Data Factory is specifically the standalone Azure Data Factory ADF thing. But essentially, you're exactly right in that we try to simplify. In fact, specifically what Miquel will show today is that the data flows inside of Fabric Data Factory are meant to be simplified from the mapping data flows within Azure Data Factory. The mapping data flows are built on Spark and are pretty complex to use because they're meant for some very complex patterns. But what we found is that in talking to customers, that the majority of those use cases are really actually much simpler than that. And so for them, it's for you all, it's going to be much easier to use the Fabric data flows than it is for the Azure Data Factory data flows. We have a lot of users, customers that are a little bit kind of, they put off a little bit and they kind of struggle to get started because they're pretty complex. And so we simplified a lot of these things. So yeah, that simplification point that you made is extremely important as you look at Fabric.
That is fantastic. Because frankly, one of the things that I think I appreciate and I think led to Power BI's big success was built upon enterprise-grade technology with a simplified front end for people to just do what they need to be done. But if necessary, a pro could come in and use that full-blown stack to deliver on whatever was necessary, right? And am I wrong in that?
No,
this is what we've got here.
You're absolutely right. I think that the way to think about it is that it's a bit of a joining of cohorts or personas, right? Miquel comes from the world of the data flows that were there in Power Query and Power BI. In the Power Platform, I guess I could just say Power Platform and simplify that statement, but those are essentially citizen personas, data integrators that are more the citizen data integrator, and they work closer to the business, who are much more responsible for making sure that the reports you're building in Power BI are accurate and are timely. Whereas you're right, on the pro side, what we sort of call the pro data integrator is probably orchestrating a lot of really complex, Spark notebooks and Databricks and Synapse Spark, a lot of SQL scripts, your SQL jobs, and then using some transformation through code first orientations. And for that, you're going to snap together a graph inside of a pipeline to do that. So we brought that pipeline from Azure Data Factory into Fabric Data Factory, so that now both of those personas can work together in the same thing. In fact, the demo we're going to show is that Miquel is going to build the data flow as a citizen business user, and then I'm going to snap that together into a pipeline to orchestrate all that and make it work.
All right. I'm very excited to get into that, and we're about to go over to, because, let's stop talking, let's get to some screens, but I do have one bit of housekeeping that I failed to do to start with, and so we're going to pull in the little Matthew Roche here. We'll go to something like this. Maybe I'm not in the way, but we have a couple Roche rules that we're going to be following here. Roche rule number 1, please make sure that you prefix any question with a Q to get them queued up so that we can talk about them. And then Roche rule number 2 is do not repeat questions. Spamming will get you in a timeout and your question removed from the queue. But these questions and these Roche rules are set up and designed so that you guys can ask questions, so that we can answer them, because we have the people who know it better than anyone else right here in this live stream. So if you have questions, put those inside of the chat. To that end, as Miquel, as you're getting ready to share your screen, and why don't you get ready to share your screen or share your screen?
I'll start with the slides, by the way.
Okay. All right.
Come on, get right order. Let's go. Come on.
Yeah. Let's head on over to it. So, but quickly, while you're bringing that up and sharing your screen in Teams, Down Parish is asking, so does Fabric data flows not use Spark?
They don't. Miquel, do you want to expand on it while I do this?
Oh, Miquel, you're muted. We lost your sound somewhere. Oh, nothing. Oh, we're doing it live, folks.
I know what she's going to say, so I can always repeat it. But do you want to try rejoining and see if it works? Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So the answer that she was saying with all those words was actually no. It does not use Spark. At least not today. So the one thing I do want to say that I want you all to keep in mind, first of all, we all want you to try and use Fabric. So Microsoft Fabric is in public preview right now. It's only been in public preview for a few weeks. Not everything that we want to eventually land in Fabric is there yet. And we are trying to evaluate how much scale we need to bring. I'm going to say this before I share, so I'm clear on all this. Before we make it generally available. So the way that the data flows in, and I guess Miquel, just nod or shake your head if I got this wrong. The way the data flows within Fabric Scale is they use the warehouse, the data warehouse, to scale out. See if I got that right. And so we believe that that's the scale that's needed to cover the 90% use cases within Fabric. And if that's not the case, then we can do other things. We do have the capability to bring Spark to it. We do that today in Azure Data Factory. When you build Power Queries, you can run those on Spark. We're just trying to prioritize what we bring into the product when, because we only have so many resources that can make all this stuff come to market. And so we're trying to be smart and deliberate about it. So please get in there, try it, use it, ping us on any social channel you got. The ideas website is great to put your ideas and let us know what is needed. So if you're trying to load, gajillion bytes of data into the lake and it's not working, then we know that we need to bring more scale than we've got today to it.
Yeah, I think to add to that, the benchmarking from the warehouse has shown that the warehouse compute delivers equal scalability as the Spark compute does. So there should almost be zero difference in using the SQL compute versus the Spark compute. And what we've seen with the SQL compute, and especially in data flows and the transformations that are being applied to your data, we can apply more transformations in SQL and get you better scale than we could use with Spark in most of the cases.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right, so I believe that answers the question. And I think we have another question, but I think this is going to be answered as we go through this demo. So I'm going to put it out there, but let's just address this one about how ADF differs from Power Query / Power BI. Let's just get into that while we go through this demo. And I'm going to flip over to your screen right there.
And it is clear, right? It's not giving that pixelation problem that you had earlier.
It looks super clear, yes.
Awesome.
Looking good.
Did you say you had a question you wanted us to answer before I do this?
No. It was, let's just call out the difference between Data Factory and Power, or data flows or Power Query and Power BI.
I think we got some of that answered in the slides then. Yeah, very good. So we have 115 slides, so it's going to be, I'm just kidding. We only have 15 slides. So we'll keep it real short, but I want to just kind of level set everything for everybody in terms of what Microsoft Fabric is. Brand new, super new. So I know you've probably, I shouldn't say I know, but some of you may have heard of it already. What we're going to do today is just give an introduction to data pipelines and data flows. And we'll show you how this all sits within the Power BI view and the workspaces through a demo. So this is both of us. We already did the intros, and there's some decent pictures of us. So the first thing I want to make sure that you understand is that from our team's perspective within the Data Factory team, we have a mission, and that mission is to be the world's data integration platform for all users on every cloud. So we're having connectors for any kind of source or destination that you have within any cloud or on-prem or whatever it is. And as you look at the slide, the sort of themes to keep in mind is that data integration within Microsoft is now a single team. So we've got everything here. In fact, I have that on a slide coming up, so I'll expand on it more. But whether that's SSIS, Power Query, Data Factory, it doesn't matter. This is, our team is able to provide sort of that single pane of glass, or that single place to go for everything data integration, ETL within Microsoft. It's been a long time getting us to this point. Like I said earlier, I've been on many different teams within Microsoft, from SQL to the field to Azure. And we've always had many different assets and capabilities around data integration. Finally, we've really made this strong effort to bring this all together into a single place, and I couldn't be more excited. And Fabric is kind of that way that we're surfacing all of this goodness to you in a single spot. So the things that you're going to get out of using data integration or data factory as a product within Microsoft is the ability to connect to any data source and rate that to pretty much any data destination or target. And you're going to do that through the ability to ingest data really super fast, to transform it using super simple tools, and be able to also provide replication for it. So we mentioned Synapse earlier. There's a capability built within Synapse called Synapse Link that is a replication for SQL that will be bringing that into Fabric as well. And then also there's the change data capture, the CDC capability that you see in ADF, Azure Data Factory, that we'll bring into Fabric as well. And one of the key things is you see these different icons on either side of the slide around the sources and the destinations. These connectors were also separate teams scattered throughout Microsoft that we've brought together into a consolidated set of connectors, which gives you hundreds of connectors to be able to use. One of the most exciting things about this whole project with Fabric that I'm really excited about is giving you all access to all of those connectors in a single place so that you can get the goodness of all the different data stores you need to talk to.
And Mark, that is a good point. Big companies are like ships. Turning them can be really difficult, especially when people are working in disparate parts of the organization. I think one of the big key things that's going to make Fabric a game changer is now everyone is in the same organization. Everyone is pulling together towards that same goal, and that amount of like synergy. I like think of like a game of tug rope, right? Or tug the rope tug thing, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
Tug of war. Oh my gosh.
Tug of war. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking tug of war too. I'm like, now you got me all confused. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, but if you got now instead of like 20 teams of 100 people pulling in all different directions, you've got one team of 2,000 people all pulling in one direction. Holy cow, I'm excited about this. So
yeah,
keep going.
That's exactly right. Yeah, again, you put it better than I could have, and I agree with that 100%. And I think that the fact that Microsoft invests in this area and also makes such an deliberate organizational change shows how important this area is. And for me, being in this space for so long, I just couldn't be happier and more thrilled to see it. And I mentioned earlier that I was going to give you a slide to kind of illustrate the different ways that we surface all of our data integration goodness to you. And this slide kind of tells that. And I think as you think about this as a funnel coming down to the bottom, where Fabric Data Factory is the new version of everything that you see. So it's all Microsoft data analytics in a single place, including the reporting. So all of Power BI available to you together with the analytics tools like the big data data lake. So there's a lake house. There is the new version of the warehouse. Of course, Data Factory for data integration, and all that is there. There's also real-time capability around event streaming, things like that inside Fabric.
We just had pizza. No, that's not it. Oh, it's like pizza, but we just had RTM last week. We were just going over real-time stuff. So
right, yeah. So the last thing on this is just that we talked a little bit about all the different products that come together to form Fabric Data Factory. So we talked about Power Query, Synapse Analytics, SSIS, and Data Factory, and Azure Data Factory. So SSIS is not there yet. We will be bringing that into Fabric as well, just like we did with Synapse and with Azure Data Factory.
Whoa, hang on. Did you just say SSIS is coming into Fabric?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow, that is the first I've heard of that. That's fantastic.
Yep. That's the same. So that's on the roadmap. I don't want to promise any timelines for that. But that is something that we did. So we did that with Data Factory several years ago, and then we brought that into Synapse not too long ago. And that same surface will appear inside of Fabric as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So as you look at Fabric from a data integration perspective, there's different workloads within your workspace within Fabric that will show, and the data integration, all of this goodness from Power Query to pipelines and all the other areas like Lakehouse, they all surface within different what we call essentially workloads within Fabric. And this slide kind of illustrates what I'm talking about. Those are persona-centric experiences. So you can select data engineer, you can select data factory, Power BI, and the context shifts and changes with that so that you see and you're highlighted and landed on the workspace elements and artifacts that meet your different personas requirements. It's a little bit nebulous to think about, but we'll show you that in a demo so you can see what that means. But it's meant to give you a way to experience your workspace that is focused on what your role is within your organization. And for this talk today, we're going to obviously focus on the one on the left, which is Data Factory. The others are data engineering, warehousing, real-time data science, and business intelligence.
Exciting.
So one single place. And this is a promise that Synapse was not able to reach because we had a ways to connect into your Power BI workspace, but it was sort of a sidecar add-on. Here now we've taken all of these data analytics capabilities and we've put those inside of Power BI. So it's a completely kind of pivot from that. And it couldn't be easier. So if you're already a Power BI premium user and customer, now you can use the capacity capability within Power BI to spin up Fabric capacities and be able to then also use the data factory pipelines and the lakehouse and the warehouse.
That is so awesome because it's the integration of all these different pieces that was so difficult. And frankly, as a consultant, that's where I did a ton of that. But I absolutely love that it's now integrated and we just get to the data. We just get to delivering insights to people. I'm super psyched about this.
Love it. That's the idea. So it's now up to us from the product team to deliver on that promise. And, we hope that you all sort of, hold us true to that by giving us the feedback, letting us know what you need to see have happen inside of Fabric. So we're going to do demos on this. I'm not going to spend too much time on the slides, but I do want to say that this is, essentially look at the a home page for being able to get your data, right? And we can get your data through data flows or through pipelines, and we'll demonstrate that. But all those connectors surface then inside of Fabric in one single place. I'll go through the slides here. I think that I have a couple of slides for our data flows I want Miquel to talk to before we go into the demo.
Fantastic. Miquel?
Yeah, definitely. So Mark, if you can go back to the previous slide, just want to focus on a couple of things here. So one of the things, and it's not currently in product today, but which is something that will come very, very, very soon, is that with the Get Data, we really want to focus more on data discovery. Currently, if you're using the data flows or pipelines, it's very focused on like creating new connections. We're getting different focus on really data discovery, items you've used before, things that you can find in the data, but also really focusing on any functionality like browsing your Azure data sources, Office, browsing SharePoint, to really, really focus on the data discovery aspects when you're like connecting to data. So just wanted to highlight that. It's not currently in product, but it's something that will come very, very soon. So if you go to the next slide, Mark, I'll talk a bit more about the data flows. So for data flows was already like a product that existed in Power BI. We brought our next generation, and with this new data flows Gen 2, there's a couple of things that we have really, really focused on. So one is really you still get like the low code data transformation using that you're used to if you like come from the Power world. And what we focused on is really the scale and compute just talked about, where we are using the SQL compute from the warehouse to really get you to the skill that you need without having to worry about that. Also, a very, very exciting feature that you would see is something we call data destinations, and it really makes data flow a ETL or ELT tool, depending on how you want to use data flows. So you can start outputting your data to a few destinations that we support today. And over time, our vision is that we will support as many output destinations as that we have input destinations. So you will see that list growing over time.
Well, and just a note on how
Yeah,
fast
Mark, you're going to.
this is.
Oh, yes.
Dataflow's Gen 2 is unbelievably fast. So really, thank you so much. I tried to identify and find the exact link to the article, but I can't find it. But if you follow Mim on Twitter, posted his link in the chat right now. He did a deep dive into how blazing fast these are, and I was blown away going through it. Do check out his post. Check out how fast data flows V2 is, and or Gen 2. What do we call it?
Gen 2.
Gen 2. Gen 2 is it's incredible. All right, keep going.
Yeah, and I'll show you in the demo later some tips and tricks to get better skill with data flows.
Awesome.
Cool. Okay, so another very exciting feature that is not in product today, but will come also very, very, very soon, is something that we are referring to as fast copy. And this is really where we want to bring the pipelines capabilities that has all the enterprise skill and the ease of use of data flows like closer together. And so what we are doing is that in data flows, you can use like the connectors in the way that you use today. But if you need, and you need to like transfer like terabytes of data that you want to like transform before you land it in like your warehouse or lake house, we are introducing fast copy connectors. So the UI of the data flows exactly stays the same. You can just connect to your data in the lake. But what we will be doing underneath is that we will leverage the pipeline infrastructure to copy your data to the destination that you specify. So with that, you can use like the ease of use of data flows, but really with like the scale of pipelines behind it. So you can like start fast copying your data to your destination before you start doing any transformations on top of that with data flows. And with that, you're going to get even like better skills that you can have today. So that's very, very exciting.
That is exciting.
Cool. And so then the last part is really the scalable data flows. And this is something I think third time we'll talk about it. And so this is really like the DW compute that will come that really can make it sure that like if you are needing to do like very complex transformations inside of data flows, things like merges and group bys, that you can like really leverage the DW compute to really speed up those processes. So you can just like transform your data at scale, and you will get better results that you've seen in data flows Gen 1.
Okay, I think why don't we do this? Why don't we jump into some demos now, I think, because we're probably at that time. And we've probably kind of, I think, laid the groundwork fairly decently. Hopefully it's starting to make some sense in terms of what we're doing with Fabric and with Data Factory. Let me share a different screen here this time. I just want to give you a lay of the land once you are inside of a workspace of Fabric, and then I'll hand off to Miquel for showing you how to build a data flow to get started.
Fantastic.
So let me share my screen. So I am now inside of what looks like Power BI, right? This is essentially the Power BI frame, but you'll see that I have a bunch of artifacts. Let me move this out of the way. Artifacts that are not data sets or reports. They are things like a lakehouse and a data pipeline. And these are parts of Data Factory. So remember I was mentioning earlier that there are persona-based workloads within Fabric. And you'll see down here at the bottom left, there is a workload switcher. And these match to those different screens I showed of the different workload types. So if I switch my context to Data Factory, you'll see that I have now a new button up here for a new data flow and a new data pipeline, because those are the two primary artifacts today within Data Factory. And so this is now a Data Factory. Notice it doesn't have Azure in front of it, so it's just DF or FDF for Fabric Data Factory if you wish. But I now see my most frequently opened things, the things I most commonly access. And these are all part of my workspace. My workspace right here I've called as the Data Factory, right here as I call the Data Factory demo. Notice on the left-hand side too, this new area is also a multi-tab area. So I have a lakehouse already open, and let me click on that to show you what that looks like. This right here is my lakehouse, and I have a couple of tables that I've pre-created through some testing that we were doing earlier. And we'll show you how to hydrate these and how to build these. We don't have a lot of time for demos, so we're just going to give you a little glancing view of these things. But when I'm able to view my data inside of this workspace, I don't ever have to leave what was previously just my Power BI online or my Power BI browser view. This workspace will contain all of those things inside of it. And so if I go to back to my workspace and I click on my pipeline, for example, this is for those of you who are ADF, Azure Data Factory users and customers already. This should look super familiar to you. We didn't want to change the orientation at all. We wanted to make it look exactly the same. So you see that we brought that UI here into this Power BI frame. And now you see on my multi-tab, I have two things open. I have my lakehouse here, and I have my pipeline over here. And so I'm able to do things like I'm able to execute this and run this and copy some data into my lakehouse and then run a data flow afterwards. And then you'll see that the menu contains all the different activities that you see in Azure Data Factory today. For the Azure Data Factory pros out there, you'll notice that not all the activities are here yet, but we are going to bring them all into Fabric over time as we go throughout the public preview. But back in my workspace, if I open anything else, let's say that I want to open up, I don't know, a SQL endpoint. Now, the SQL endpoint is how the warehouse, the next generation, next version of the data warehouse works. Within Fabric, what you do is you essentially store all your data as Delta inside of the lakehouse. And there's this concept known as one lake, which is where all of your data lives and is shared within your workspaces within Fabric. And then you have a SQL endpoint on top of that, so you can run SQL queries against it. So it becomes a very, very flexible and very easy to load and fast to load and work with environments. And now on my switcher, you'll see three different things. I can switch between my lakehouse, my pipeline, and my SQL view for my data.
This is fantastic. Mark, can I just, again, clarify something? Because I think this makes a lot of sense. Or I want to see if this makes sense to you. I like to think of data flows as moving data from point A to point B, applying transformations with a really nice front end so that anyone can work with it. And that's the scope of data flows. Data Factory, on the other hand, is much more around orchestration of things and triggering events. And so that you could say, okay, like I want to copy it, and then I want to do this, and then I want to do these other things, of which inside of there may be transformations. It may be run a data flow. It may be run a Spark notebook, right? It might be do those things. But does that make sense, or am I off base?
No, yeah, I mean, I think your thinking is perfect on that.
Okay.
There's only slight modification I would make on that, which is that if you remember on the slides that Miquel was walking through earlier, she mentioned this concept of quote unquote fast copy.
Yeah.
And that is the ability for the data flow engine to be able to leverage, and this is the whole aspect of us bringing the teams together to give you, to surface to our users and our customers the best of all of our technology. Data flows can now leverage this ability right here, which is super fast and super tuned. It uses a service within Azure that we built in the Data Factory team that we're very proud of, called the Azure Data Movement Service. And that is moving data across the Azure Fabric in a super fast way. It's been tuned over 8 years now, or 9 years almost.
Okay.
And so what we do is we say that if you want to get data super fast into the lake, that copy activity is a great way to do that. It's essentially another way to get or acquire data. absolutely data flows can do that too. Data flows real sort of value beyond that it brings is that transformation capability, that data wrangling, and that ease of use, right? So what we say is essentially, if you really just want to kind of land data real fast, copy activity will do that inside of a pipeline. That's why data flows is going to start leveraging that. It's not there yet. It's something that's almost ready. And once that happens and data flows can use the copy, there shouldn't be any reason to come into the pipeline if you don't want to and do this manually. You can just use the data flow, like you said. And it'll acquire the data super fast using the best technology we have. And then you can apply your transformations all within a single data flow.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's
and
great.
Then, so I'm going to call a bit of an audible because of the time. Because what I want to say is, since I'm already here in the pipeline, I'll just show you that you can absolutely do what Chris was talking about. So you can use copy to get your data in the lake, use your data flow to acquire maybe additional data, to maybe add some reference data to it, do some merges or joins and transform it. Miquel will show you that in a second. And then you can do something else, which would be a very common thing to do, would be to apply a notebook on top of that. A notebook would leverage the Spark engine that has been modified for Fabric. So we have the Synapse Spark that came with Synapse, and that has been taken forward to a set of essentially Spark pools that are always available, super fast, in like less than 10 seconds, I think it is, within Fabric. And then all of your notebooks would be available to you here. This is a new workspace, so I don't have any, but you can just click new on here, and then you can go ahead and build your notebook. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah. So now you have all of Spark, all of SQL, data integration, Power BI. It's just layers and layers of analytics all in one pane of glass. I didn't need to leave my workspace to do any of these things. So here I am in a notebook environment now. Now I have Spark running, and I can do anything I want to here.
See, this is fantastic. And if you could go back to the previous screen, this is for all of my like enterprise people out there that and I know there are people out there that poo-poo the data flows, and that's for business users, and fine, right? Okay, you're Spark guys, awesome. I think that we're going to see a huge advantage where we're going to see those hardcore data engineers are going to build out their copy into a notebook, and they're going to run their Spark jobs for their bronze, then their silver, and then our transformed gold that the business or department owns will come in with the data flows. And I think that's going to be a game changer here. So super excited about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the medallion architecture, and we want to fully support that. We're building some documentation around the best way to build that, because within your lakehouse, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have essentially a set of different tiers within that. So you want to have a lakehouse with a bronze layer, then a silver and a gold. And you're right, by the time you reach the gold, you've gone through your wrangling and your transformations and your data flow to make that data available to all of your business users from the gold layer within there. And that's what this is all meant to support 100%.
Yep. Awesome. Right, sorry. You've got a lot to cover.
Oh, no, I love the questions. This is great to be interactive on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause right here. I'm going to stop my sharing, and I'd love if Miquel would come on. And what I want to do now is have you see Data Flows Gen 2 and experience that, and see how you can get started with that inside of the Fabric experience.
All right, let's do it. Here we go. Oh, Michaela, you've gone mute again. All of this. Almost.
Apologize. We've got this bizarre like Rube Goldberg kind of thing going on here to make this all work.
Yeah. Internet is fun today. That's all I can say. I will say I'm going to post inside of the chat here. I do have, for those of you who are not familiar with the oops. So
if we have an echo, that probably means that Michaela's mic might be working now.
Yeah, I think your mic is working, but
okay, great. Yes? No?
Yes. Go for it. You got it. You had it.
Okay, great. Okay, so focusing with the data is a lot of like productivity improvements. If you're working with Dataflow Gen 1, you guys that there was first like a lot of extra screens you had to go through before you can like start building directly. And so I just want to start off with a few productivity improvements that we made. So one of the things, if you've noticed, is that we have the search bar here. It's been there for a long time, but you just easily find the data that you need.
Yeah, Miquel, maybe if you turn off your camera, we're having some, yeah. So hopefully that'll straighten out. Oh, yes. okay, yeah, so we focus a lot on like productivity and making it like much easier to work with data flows and just like help you remove a couple of steps if you are a like advanced data flow user. So one of the things that we are very focused on is focusing on the search and like quick access to things. So if you can see here, we have the search bar. It's been there for a while, but we started to adding like your recent sources and recent data that you have. So you can just use if you want to get data from. You can also see like things I've like really used in like other data flow across my browser. So instead of like going through like the get data, filling in my credentials, I can just directly click on like the data that I've used before, and now it just like directly loads it into the Power Query screen, and it didn't have to do like any steps. It takes my credentials and I'm just done. And so with that, it really, really improves my productivity. So then the other thing I wanted to talk about is the SQL compute. And so by default, every Dataflow Gen 2 can leverage the DW compute as like a backend implementation to really, really get you that speed. There's just like one thing that you have to do, and that is related to, if you're familiar with like the computer entities. So by default, all your queries are like staged, and all your queries will go into like a lake house so we can leverage the DW compute for you to use. So all you have to do if you have any complex transformations is just to reference your query. And now this reference query, this new query that you're building, is going to use the stage data in the lakehouse and use the DW compute to transform your data at scale. So say, for example, I want to do like a complex transformation, like a group by that can like require a lot of compute, and maybe my source data is not like perfect for doing. I can just group my data by, say, city. I'm just count the number of customers in. And now during refresh, this group by will be using the W compute. So no matter how much data I have, I can really start transforming this data at scale. Now the second thing that's like new for data flows that is really making it like this ETL tool is the in your data flow could go to a different data destination. And so what you have like this new ribbon button for destination. So currently there is 4 destinations that we are supporting. So we support Azure SQL databases, we support lake houses, warehouses, and Custo, both the KQL databases as well as the Azure Data Explorer Custo. So for this scenario, I'll just like output my data to a lake house. We have a lakehouse connector for like both getting data as outputting data that focuses on the navigation. So you can see here all your Fabric workspaces that you have. So I can just find the workspace that I want to load my data to, and then also find the lakehouse that I want to load my data to. From here, I can just like give it a name. Because like there was already like a table name that was matching the table that I had, we just automatically provide you like a new name. So it's like very easy to just click next, next, next. You also have the ability to load to existing tables. So you can just select any of the existing tables from the lakehouse or create like a new table.
So I'll just create a new table and I click on next. And now I have the option to set my update method. So currently today we support 2 different update methods for loading to your lakehouse. So you can either like append your data. So every time you refresh your data flow, new data will be appended to the existing data in the lakehouse. Or you can do replace. And that means that every time you refresh your data flow, the entire table that's in the lakehouse will be replaced with like the new data that is coming from your data flow. In the future, we're also going to support more update methods like the merge support that will be very popular, I think, for lakehouse and more scenarios. So that will come in the future, as well as giving you more and more customization options to have more control and how you're loading. So this will like build out to be more advanced over time. But yeah, by default, things are selected. I can just click on save settings, publish my data flow, and now this data will be loaded into the lakehouse. My transformations will be done via compute. So with that, this data flow will start running very, very fast. One additional I'll give it up to Mark is the refresh history. See that we have like data flow gen 1 was that the very painful with like if you've used it before, it's like downloading a CSV file, opening it up if there's like any errors. So what we have today is that we have a inline refresh history experience. So if you click on the 3 dots and you go to refresh history, you actually get like an in-product experience with everything you need, and it also has a lot more information on either if your data flow fails, why it's failing, but also over time we're going to give like more and more information on everything that happened during your refresh, how much data was loaded, how long different parts of the operation took, so you can really make sure that you get better insight into your data flow, and you can also act on that. Of course, since I'm live demoing, this is like a long spinner, should be this way, but I think everyone knows that this just happens when you.
The demo gods.
I want to point out something else. The demo gods meet the data gods.
Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to show you, just keep your screen up there for a second, Miquel. The one thing I want you all to look at too when you're playing with Fabric is on the left-hand side, you'll see on her screen, there's a section called Monitoring Hub. It's a little bit grayed out right now because she has this the modal up right now. Monitoring Hub is the single place for you to see all of your refresh histories, your pipeline runs, everything that your notebook runs, all of those. And the fact that she's showing you data flow refresh for data flow is only one way to refresh your data flow. You can also, like I was showing within a pipeline, add that data flow inside of an orchestration pipeline, and we will show you that run history inside of the pipeline run too. So it's really an interesting kind of amalgamation of all these different capabilities when you're in Fabric. So Chris, I do know we only have about 5 minutes left. I don't know, did you want to spend the last 5 minutes on questions, or Miquel, did you want to show anything else before we do that?
No, we can do questions.
I saw there were a bunch of questions and I didn't get a chance to respond to them. Did you want to pick any out in particular we should?
So I had one question here about any plans for connectors to Databricks Unity catalog? Is that something that we're looking at?
Yeah, we get this one a lot. And Miquel does have a lot of ownership around our connectors too. She works a lot with that team, but this is one that we do have on the roadmap. We hear this one quite a bit, quite often.
Is there plans for it?
There is. It's on the roadmap.
Okay. Oh, okay.
No ETAs. Do not ask me for ETAs. I shall not be doing ETAs. I've been doing PMing for too long.
Awesome. I mean, there are a lot of comments and stuff in here, but I think many of these questions you were answering, unless you saw one.
You responded to Morton here on one. I wasn't sure what the question was about that you're saying. I believe this is something that will be coming to Fabric and functions or data activator.
Yes. There was a question on, and actually this is a good one. This is a question on LinkedIn. For some reason, it didn't bleed into our feed here. But Morton was asking, does Azure Functions still have a place in the Fabric branded data factory?
Oh, got it. Yeah, so you'll be able to call all of the Azure compute things from Data Factory and Fabric. It's just not all of the activities are there yet. We're adding them over time over the next couple of months, and Azure Functions will be one of them. Yeah, so we are looking at interesting ways to bring Azure Functions in as a native capability in Fabric too. But that's just some thoughts that we have right now. But yes, the activity to run Azure Functions will be there soon.
Okay. I wasn't sure if that was going to be part of Data Activator or if it was still going to be a separate thing, right? There's a lot still kind of up in the air there. Is that
It is up in the air. Yeah,
right?
we
Okay.
have different discussions on what to do with that. Would love to hear some feedback. We don't have the time now, but use ideas, use Twitter,
Yep.
to give some thoughts on how you'd like to see it, and we'd love to get your input on it. Yeah.
Yeah. And up at the top, there was a question around cost of all these things. So if you're new, if you're an existing Power BI Premium customer, what costs are there to get started in Fabric?
So it's a trial right now, so you can now. I'll be honest with you, I don't know all this exactly perfectly well.
Okay.
From the Azure world, I'm still learning the Power BI model.
Okay.
I do believe that premium customers will be enabled into the trial. There is a way to buy essentially Fabric capacities from the Azure portal that are based on number of vCores that you can use. Things like data flows and pipelines will, burn down those capacity units as you go. The cost is there is some good documentation online that we can point you to get the actual mechanism. Oh, who did a guy in the cube did a great video on how to do that. I'd recommend checking that out. Fabric capacity or something like that they called it, and they do talk about exactly how to acquire that compute.
Yeah, and I'll give you a quick rundown. If you're using Power BI Premium today, there's no additional cost. It just has to be enabled on each capacity, right? So your capacities have to have it turned on. So if you're a Power BI capacity owner, you could say, yes, I want people to use it. Awesome. You're in, you're using it, you're good to go. The other option, as Mark was saying, is inside of Azure, you can go and you can actually purchase Fabric capacities today. They start as little as F2.
Yep.
And the tests that MIM has been running that I referenced before are all on FS or F2s. He had started using the free capacity I'm about to talk about, but he switched over because he did not want that free layer to artificially tamper his performance metrics, because there is the big one for getting access to Fabric today is a absolutely free trial that is available for 60 days. You get an F64, so you can get in there and you can really like kick the tires, light the fires, like take this thing to town. You could do a ton of work with that free trial. So you can really see what is Microsoft Fabric capable of. Okay. And then on the licensing side, so those are the capacity. So it's capacity based. There's some storage based. That's just your Azure ADLS G2 storage prices. Was it $20 a terabyte or something like that a month or whatever? It's negligible, really, but it's something. And then there's user licensing. Most of the time, the licensing for everything Fabric is free. The only place where you have to fall into licensing is everything around Power BI. So if you need a pro license to share to pro users, you have to have a pro license. If you want to share to people without a pro license or use premium Power BI premium capabilities, you have to have a premium capacity available for you. But that's it. Super simple, super easy. Just different ways to access it. But
Chris, that was awesome. Thank you for that, by the way. Now, if anybody wants to know the details of how to buy Azure Data Factory, we could spend an hour on that. But
that's another live stream.
It's meant to be easier, I guess, is the bottom line to it than it was in Azure. So yeah, those of you who worked with Power BI for a long time, like that, understand the stuff really well. And that's a great explanation. Thank you.
You bet. All right. Well, we are we're past our time, and so Miquel, Mark, thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy days and working in the Data Factory minds and bringing up this rich goodness for us to enjoy. So thank you guys very much for that. Thank you all for everyone who is on the live stream for joining in and watching. We do this for you, so thank you for coming and asking questions and being part of this great community. Really enjoy it. Thank you guys all so much. Before we go, Mark, Miquel, any parting words?
Thank you for having us, hosting us, Chris. Thanks everybody for joining. The great questions. Please try Fabric. Tell us the good, the bad, the ugly. Want to know it all?
Yeah, nothing to add to that.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Peace.
Bye-bye.
Baker Tilly Digital combines strategic industry insight and advanced technical expertise to uncover and solve your digital transformation challenges. If you're interested in learning more, check out our website at bakertilly.com/digital.